So appreciate you guys just huddling and talking through, conversational, again, whatever Q&As and wherever we want to go with it. I know you guys got football here in a little while, so we can just run through some of that. And I know Brad, I just got some notes from Jeff, but I haven't seen all the notes from Brad's time earlier with you guys. But share the frustration, obviously, of last night, right? And disappointment, frustration's a good word. And just think we're a tournament team. Watch the games, resume, just how I view it, and that was the anticipation maybe going into the selection show, and saw all the brackets, due diligence, so I know it was probably 50-50 proposition, but you just never know. And so therefore for it to come through and us be on the wrong side of it, really, really frustrating. It's just a good word. Educated hard over the past couple weeks with our staff, sort of from a media side of things, from committee, constituents, from the ACC standpoint, as far as what our attributes were and like context for the season with injuries and non-conference scheduling. Obviously, has been a big point of discussion, and circumstances around that was very much part of the last couple weeks. Certainly, my role. Other staff members' role in working through the league and otherwise, and so I'm happy to, but I think from what Brad talked about earlier, I don't need to chop up all those nuances. I think he covered a lot of that, but a lot of that we have been very simpatico on just the perspective that Clemson's a tournament team, should have been in, and therefore the frustration and disappointment that we're not, and there's a couple lenses to it. Obviously, ours is very focused on Clemson, but then you get into the ACC and only 5 teams, second year in a row. Last year, ACC had 5 teams in and won 15 games, 14 or 15 games, and so that trend of 2 years in a row of only 5 teams in, and the metrics and the net of our league. Ultimately, seemingly some of the brand or the prestige of ACC basketball is concerning. Of where that's at. This year, and again, we're on the wrong side of it. Along with North Carolina was obviously right there. Last year, Wake Forest was right there and on the wrong side of it. And so that trend, those disappointments is really, really is troubling. And so we have a lot of work to do as a league. Sure, how we debrief metrics and resumes and kind of what has happened, how we schedule, right? 20 league games, more or less, non-conference schedule. Again, I know Brad covered on some of that, but view from an after-action standpoint as a league, let alone for Clemson, that there's a lot to review there. I've talked to Commissioner a lot, talked to him leading up to Selection Sunday, talked to him last night for a while. He was great. I know he reached out to Brad as well, another conference office staff member. As far as the disappointment and frustration with it. I've heard from a handful of other ADs in our league and out of, that doesn't seem right, and those have been, that's supportive. It kind of gives you affirmation of maybe what you think, let alone we see the talking heads and ESPN and Billis and those folks talk about the tournament worthy teams, tournament teams, and just have a lot of conviction that's what was earned, to use Hunter Tyson quote, this year, and kind of who we are. So the frustration of that is where we're at, but I know Brad's certainly getting the guys ready and excited to play Wednesday night, and hopefully 2 more home games after that and beyond. After a great year, 23-10, historic in a lot of ways for Clemson regular season, 3 seed overall, or 3 seed in the tournament. And again, a lot of those platitudes of the season, really pleased and pleased of what was accomplished and the team and the leadership of the team, and excited to move forward with Brad with that. He and I met this morning for a little while, and there's certainly, obviously, season's not complete, so we have a lot of off-season discussions and planning to get into, no question, but from a support for him and a support and investment in our program, it's that we cover some of that, and I wanted to huddle here with you guys and keep going. I know obviously last year and a lot of review of program status and hey, what's expectations, and certainly I put out a letter, put out some thoughts as it relates to expectations and investment and how we continue to move forward with Clemson basketball, and so that still holds true. And last offseason, this offseason, I want us to continue to plan for the NCAA tournament. Those were my words from a year ago. And from an expectation standpoint, that'll always be, and quite frankly, I hope that maybe evolves into a minimum type of expectation for Clemson basketball. And yeah, we weren't selected last night, but I view us as a NCAA tournament team. And so the evaluation of where we're at as a program right now and what next year looks like in years ahead, that I'm excited for us to continue to invest in the program, men's and women's, and with Brad and support to continue to achieve postseasons and plan for postseason, plan for NCAA tournament, and continue to raise the bar of expectations. And with that comes continued investment. Again, I know I linked, and it was intentional to have those public comments because there was a lot of questions of that. And I know a year ago I was 3 months on this job, and kind of how important is Clemson basketball. And it's really important, and that was really the intention of the letter, and I'll reiterate that today. We've shown areas of investment, staff, some things that are seen externally and kind of internal programmatic things, and we'll continue to do that. We're going to announce later this spring a new basketball operations project, a $40 million project that we'll send to the Board of Trustees in next month, we anticipate, to expand our practice facility for men's and women's nutrition area, facility investment for basketball. So that's another show, a significant show of investment. And so it's not a one-off season where you snap your fingers with staff and some things and now that's investment. It's a continuum, and there'll continue to be show of that from our administration towards basketball, and with that, the continued expectations of success come with it. So I covered a lot of bases there, I know, or I hope intentionally, of frustration from last night, evaluation of this year, and continued investment and expectations ahead. So let's dovetail from there. Where do you want to go?
In terms of the non-conference, I know Brad had some pretty pointed comments about the ACC and feel like they didn't get enough help in terms of, it's always the blue blood programs that get sent to the marquee MTEs, tournaments, and Clemson and teams in the bottom of the Big Ten and the ACC Big Ten are always paired together because that's where they're projected to finish. Like, have you shared those concerns with the commissioner, and just what's sort of your take on that?
Yeah, we talked. Yes, I have, and that's I think one of the benefits, and has I think helped my evaluation of where Clemson basketball is at and what's needed and what's ahead. That I have been here for 10 years now, and so I've had that type of conversation with Brad, obviously in a prior role and now this role, for quite some time, and with the league office. And it's just really interesting of how what's best for the league. Do you support the middle and get more teams in? Do you really invest at the more of the blue bloods and make sure they're getting great seeds? And the answer is all of it, right? But those specifics of scheduling, of MTEs, of matchups, often dialogue. When Commissioner came, this was a year ago, 2 years ago maybe, and was making his tours around campus, had some specific sit-down time with Brad and Commissioner Phillips on these kind of topics for the league. So, as I said, it's concerning of the last couple of years with the league. Sure, as that ties to resources and investment and opportunity from a league standpoint, right, which is another topic that we're not, we don't need to get into all that today. But I think it's all interconnected, and so I think the push and the support from the league for all 15 teams, there's all kinds of different ways to go about it, and obviously we feel like we're the short end here this year as it relates to the tournament.
Is there any optimism on your part, just in get dialogue that ever changes? That it's not always Duke, North Carolina, or Virginia that's going to these things.
Yeah, I think so. I'm excited to see what our Big Ten matchup will be next year. We finished third, and so if oftentimes, you kind of match based on order of finish, not directly, but generally that's the flow from years past. And so, we finished third. And so next year, expect a pretty high level Big Ten matchup.
Anytime you get this late in somebody's tenure, there are camps that form, and of course there's going to be the camp that says the bottom line is 3 tournaments.
3 in 13 years.
13 years, and the supposedly clear expectation going into this year was NCAA tournament. So how do you? That's your constituent, part of your constituency.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. No doubt. Again, plan for NCAA tournament, and I hope to always be in a position with the program that's a legitimate off-season discussion, plan, and expectation. It was last year, and it will be this year. And that's not the case for every program or every off-season. So that's part of the calculus of where our program's at. That's legitimate discussion from last year, and again, tournament team, in my opinion, and as we embark on this offseason. And so we're going to continue to do that. You're right, Larry, no doubt. 13 years, and you can, it's body of work, and you can evaluate the full tenure it's necessary. And so you can't split the tenure. I got it, but there's been a clear, even just investment within the facility and Little John and operations, and not that means there's one chapter of a tenure and a second chapter is totally different. But if you do look at the last 5 or 6 years and 2 tournaments, 2 first fours out and should have been in, I certainly assess the last 5 or 6 years. I don't have all the stats of our conference winning percentage and things like that, but it's really good. It's really good. And so I think that's where, from a current moment of where the program's at now, you have to take into account the full tenure, no question, where the program's at now and what the immediate future looks like, let alone the more recent past. I feel really confident and excited about where we sit. And again, if you look at it for a full 13 years, I can understand different perspectives, but from current status and this offseason and in recent history, I think that story is something that should be really compelling for all of us.
I'm sure that with, as Larry said, the different camps kind of aligning themselves, you wanted to get this out to kind of take the pressure off Brad. But when did you say to yourself, hey, I'm not going to do anything, I'm not going to make a change? And did you tell Brad, and kind of how did that conversation go, just so he's not coaching with a cloud over his head?
That's right. Yeah. I don't know, David, that there was one game, one win, one moment that it was like, hey, we're staying the course. Certainly, how we've played throughout the season, let alone last 4 out of 5 regular season, NC State. I think there was a lot of continued momentum as we close the season. And Brad and I, like I said, met early this morning, 7-something, the morning after the tournament, not because that was a make or break decision, but because of, quite frankly, it was how we continued to focus on the NIT, but quickly move into off-season planning because transfer portal opened today, right? And staff and recruiting and all those type of transitions. So just wanted to quickly get ahead of it with Brad, and have that conversation with him. Like how's he feeling? What are some of his perspective and immediate feedback? And again, we have a lot more to cover, and we will. But wanted to quickly huddle with him and again with you guys just to be able to move forward with what again I think to be a really successful year and get into end of season and then off season planning for the tournament next year.
What was his message about kind of, I guess, him wanting to stay here, wanting to be the head coach, and kind of where he feels like the program is right now?
Yeah, heavy perspective again on some of the current health of the program, and you get all the off the court stuff, which I think has been, and I'll further it, of just how Brad runs the program. And I know we don't take that for granted, but it's he's been so consistent with that compliance, academics, former players, doing it the right way. that's just it's just that gives you so much of a foundation of which to build upon the competitive success. Excited for how the roster focuses next year. Certainly, transfer portal, our NIL program in support of our current roster, all that, how that points to a positive trend line to next year. And I get excited about where we're at with him. He has 3 years left on his contract. Expect us to continue in that status and have a heck of a year next year.
So, no, is going to stay the same as from this past year? Is that the plan for contract-wise?
Contract. Don't anticipate to feel like 3 years, and that's where we'll continue to focus. And he's able to recruit and have a heck of a year next year. So don't expect to alter that at this point.
As you talked about the new operations center, are there any other areas you feel like you could invest further, whether it's recruiting budget, whether it's an assistant coach pool, things like that? What things do you feel like you could do?
Yeah, there's actually, John, a NCAA, this is February, maybe January, changed some of their accountable coach rule. And so now there's actually 2 additional coaches for men's and women's basketball. This is a national thing that can be on the court. And you can effectively, not that they allow you to hire you can hire staff members, but that can be on the court to train and develop and coach. And so, it's one of the things we talked about this morning of like, hey, we need to talk about that and what that looks like. Do we add another staff member or 2? And if that's how we need to do it competitively, or how Brad has a plan for, and Amanda, from a women's basketball standpoint, this applies there too. And we would look to make that available there too, if from their leadership standpoint, have a role, have a need. And so, yes, staffing, I guess specifically, because this offseason is a different one. If we'd look to add more staff or not, we'll get into that conversation. Assistant coach pool, we certainly made big strides with that last year. And feel that we are in a much better place than we've been in years past. But as it looks to retain coaches, assistant coaches, we're going to continue to be aggressive there. And the facility piece, as you said, is a big one. And that's a facility, right? We'll have to get it's a $40 million facility, so there's approvals and board and state. So we won't break ground on that for quite a while, for at least not this year. But there'll be some other internal facility pieces that we'll do from graphics and some other weight equipment and things like that.
Where would it be? Do you know?
Yeah, so we have some designs, David, actually on the IPTE corner, or the corner opposite IPTE, and essentially just kind of adding an additional operations and practice facility, and then kind of in the middle and adjoining nutrition training table area.
Where those parking spaces are, kind of.
Oh gosh, you had to go there. Yes. I mean, great. It's great real estate, but we want it to still be certainly a connected facility and connected with Little John and connected with the women's, or with the practice facility. Now, since we'll have 2 men's and women's practice facility, that's so they have their distinct areas. And now with gymnastics starting next fall, gymnastics from a setup and meet standpoint will take time off of the main court. And so now having an additional practice court, given that we're adding a sport to the broader facility, is important. So again, that's not a snap of the finger, but we started the design of that and the fundraising of that facility about a year ago. And we're at the point now to have the financing plan and put the fundraised dollars in place and move that forward for approvals and ultimately construction.
I know NCAA tournament's always a goal, but when you look at stability with the program, and I think 10 straight winning seasons, and you see kind of other places where maybe they made a change and it hasn't gone so well, just having that stability, does that play a factor some?
I think there's I'll maybe answer it in 2 different lenses. I think the high floor, call it, basketball is it's 5 players play, your roster's 12 to 13, like between injuries, between wrong guy transfer, wrong guy go pro, so to speak, and men's or women's tournament too. Like, the stability is an underrated value. I think that Brad's created a good ball coach, and you're right, Matt. You look at other places and been inconsistent. And it's just hard to sustain that level of achievement. That being said, like that doesn't mitigate or govern the aspirations for higher level achievement. So I kind of answer that of like, yeah, stability is significantly valued, but not from a passive sense. Like it's really valued significantly in any program, let alone basketball and how Brad leads. But also have expectations, aspirations to raise the bar. So I think both can be true. It's not like you settle for one level of stability and that mitigates higher aspirations. I view both to be true here.
Do you feel like y'all had anyone in the actual room? Like I know you said you heard from ADs out around the country. Do you feel like there was anyone in the actual room that was kind of fighting on Clemson's behalf? Or
Yeah, the ACC monitor was Charles McClellan, who's the commissioner of the SWAC, and then Bubba Cunningham, who's the ACC representative on the committee that has to be recused when, at least when his team's being talked about, and obviously with North Carolina being in the first four out like Clemson, I think there was probably a lot of times where he wasn't in the room when schools like us, because North Carolina was also kind of in that, on the bubble, so to speak. Where that seemingly is kind of how things transpired. So, but through our league office, like again, we significantly pushed the, everyone that, well, good luck politicking. Well, it's not really it's just making sure context, circumstances of our season or games or roster are known and well known, and certainly we're highlighting our attributes and metrics. So that's what it was. But we were very comprehensive. Amongst all areas that we thought could really affect it.
What was your reaction to Carolina being ahead of you guys?
Yeah, a little surprised. I was surprised. But I think we were kind of tale of two cities, right, where I know one of our awards was our non-conference strength of schedule, but our head-to-heads and our finishing the league and league record compared to North Carolina had one of the best non-conference strength of schedules, and obviously their records in the league wasn't as good. So I think we're both maybe a victim of the extreme a little bit on either side of it.
So have you and Brad talked, or will you guys talk, I guess, if the committee is weighing the strength schedule so heavily, like it seems that they are, about reassessing your approach to non-conference scheduling and maybe what you guys can do? Because I know some of that you don't necessarily control.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yes. I think you have to. Like we've talked about it a bunch already, but just kind of like a little bit in arrears. And your question is more of like, hey, how's that going to affect your next season? Kind of scheduling strategy. And so yeah, absolutely. But so much of scheduling is managed by the staffs. Like I get football scheduling, athletic directors usually drive that strategy in concert with football coach. Of course, that's at least how we do it here. Basketball scheduling is more driven by your basketball coaching staff. And we certainly communicate and in concert, but now like the strategy, the analytics of it, yeah, we need to take some time in the offseason and look at that. I don't think there's any revisionist history of how we did this. I know Brad talked on the, TCU, Cal situation, and obviously South Carolina, who would play every year. But I do think, Davis, it's again, as a league, like we're going to take some time talking with commissioner, like in this next coming weeks, and then our spring meetings where head coaches and ADs are together, and whether we bring in some experts or otherwise, just to kind of talk on some of the analytics of it. That's absolutely needed.
Better. Go ahead.
Is it safe to say that you had a feeling even before the tournaments that, I'm gonna stick with him, the decision was essentially made for that?
Yeah, I certainly felt very much heading in that direction, just kind of buoyed off of the season and the success. And, to your point earlier, Larry, I think your phrase was camps, and David, like I understand it. But for those of us that were at games, a lot of games in Littlejohn this year, like apathy or fan, camps, like there's a bunch of games in there this year that apathy wasn't a word in there. I got the picture in my office already printed and hung up with the Duke game, and that's Duke, I got it. But Miami, Florida State, NC State, Virginia Tech, like so many sold out. I don't know the exact stats, Jeff, but we had our average attendance this year was higher than last year. From a financial standpoint, we exceeded our plans for season ticket sales and single game sales. So because those from a business lens, right, which is certainly part of my job, those are metrics, funny word, metrics that are important to decisions of any program. And I just think this past year and where we're at from a program standpoint, like those things continue to track in a good direction, and we want and need to win. And obviously a lot of excitement as the season built and saw a lot of great environments, and we're going to need to do our job and quite frankly a better job from a marketing awareness, in-game experience side of things, specifically for basketball, preseason and in-season. So that topic that I get asked about from time to time of just concern of energy or apathy of the program. I mean, I think you couldn't have gone to if you went to games in Little John, that would not be the sense. I mean, quite frankly, the opposite. There's a lot of excitement and momentum from the in-game and support standpoint for the program.
You get the feeling it's almost better to go 4-6 or 5-5 against Quad 1 and 2 than 10-0 against Quad 3.
Brad and I talk about that a lot. And again, I know he gave that example of TCU versus Cal, and we beat Cal, and we were 23-10. It's kind of like, well, hey, had we matched up against TCU, they're really good. Maybe we don't win that game, so we're 22-11. But does the metrics of that, which is kind of your point, does that sway, the net and the strength of schedule? You can't help but question that at this point. Yeah.
I know Brad and some other coaches have talked about, like, we don't know exactly what